hopefully stop.
Hello, everybody. It's Donna Cravata, and we're back again with another Real 50 Over 50 interview. And today we have Susannah Steers, the owner of Moving Spirit Pilates. And I just have to say, I'm so excited to have her here today because she is somebody that is very special in my life. She is a friend, she is a client, she is a colleague, and she's a genius of movement. So I'm going to introduce her quickly and we're going to have a conversation. So she is a Pilates and integrated movement specialist. She's the owner of Moving Spirit Pilates in North Vancouver, British Columbia, and she's the host of the Heart of Motion podcast and the co-host of Small Conversations for a Better World podcast. She's got more than 30 years of experience in movement and fitness. She's a former dancer and a Pilates integrated movement specialist, and she's a speaker and workshop leader. She brings both her personal and professional experience to her work and has helped hundreds of clients build a sense of ease and movement through the stages of their lives. Susannah provides a safe place for her students to share their stories, to be heard, and to build trust and relationships with their own bodies in a supportive and compassionate way and without judgment. She lives by how you move matters, and it is the mission behind her lifetime of work. She cares deeply for for people, and is embodied in it's embodied in her methodology of guiding each person to find their own direction for their own body. Welcome, Susannah.
Thanks so much for having me, Donna. I've been looking forward to this conversation.
Me too. And I wanted to do something a little different with you today because as I was preparing, I was looking through your website and I just didn't feel like I had to do a lot of preparation because, like, we know each other for, I don't know, 12 or 15 years, something along those lines. Um, so as I was looking through your website, I was really taken by the testimonials that were there and how they're so consistent in stating how what you do is so different and unique. And I really wanted to bring that out in this conversation. And I thought the best way that we could do that is instead of asking you questions, I could just share a snippet of one of these testimonials and let the conversation go from there. So if you're game to go that direction.
I'm game for anything with you, Donna.
Okay.
Let's give it a go.
Okay. All right, so one, and these are not full testimonials. I'm not giving names. Just the things that captured my eye. Okay, so somebody on her testimonial page. Oh, and by the way, like if you want to see where they are, here's her website, so you can head over there, and I'll leave that up for a little bit as we're talking. But the first one that jumped out at me was working with Susannah changed how I think about moving and movement's relation to my body. So how does that work in your work?
Well, I think a lot of the time we especially in the fitness industry, really take a top-down approach. The brain controls everything. We're deciding on a linear path. This muscle does this muscle does this, and this is how we create movement. That works in a certain kind of way, but it doesn't really give you the full spectrum of your movement. So you're training muscles to do things because that's how we were taught, right? One muscle attaches here and it attaches here, and its function is X. It flexes your arm or it extends your hip. But in the body, it doesn't really work that way. There are patterns of movement. There are ways of putting those contractions and extensions together that our brain does. But if we're only training a muscle, we're not looking at how that movement passes through a body, how that movement is initiated, for example, or controlled. It really is quite limiting. And so when you can work with somebody to explore maybe where the holes in strength in a particular movement chain exist, or where they're maybe putting in too much effort and it's getting in the way of the flow of the movement, it changes how it feels in your body, and something that once maybe felt really effortful to do because you were throwing everything you had at this inefficient thing now feels easier to manage,
Mhm.
and you have strength in new places. And so instead of feeling effortful, now you have some strength without a whole lot of struggle.
Mhm. Ooh, I
So,
like that.
yeah.
So now I'm actually gonna throw some questions in there too.
Love it.
How does this impact your body as you're aging, and are you ever too old to start?
Okay, first, you are never too old to start, ever. Move however you can move, even if it's a tiny little way. You don't
Mhm,
have to think about it in, I'm going to run a marathon tomorrow. Do what your body can do in the moment. There's a really great saying, and I think it's Perry Nicholson, he does chasing pain or stop chasing pain. And he has a saying, your body does what it can with what it's got in the moment it's in to heal you. And I love that saying because it also shows some limitations. If we're not nourished well, if we're not doing things well, the body does the best that it can. But I also like that from the perspective of something like aging or recovering from an injury or feeling that you need to do something to change things. You just start where you are rather than where you think you should be or where other people think you should be. You just start where you are.
brilliant.
So when I think about movement patterning as we age, and training movement as we age, there are obvious things that happen. Yes, we start to lose muscle mass. The bones are a different consideration. There are things that we have to pay attention to in a different way in our 50s, 60s, 70s that we didn't have to do when we were 20. We don't have the same kind of resilience. We also have patterns built up. Maybe you broke your leg when you were 15 and you ended up, limping for a while. And then a little later, you had a baby and you had a C section. So your core isn't quite what it was. And so there are all these compensations that sort of accumulate. And maybe we didn't pay attention. That thing that you hurt yourself doing that you never really got around to dealing with because you were busy, all these little things sort of accumulate like building blocks in the body, and we do the best we can with what we've got. But at some point, that can start to really limit our mobility and our strength. And I find that's particularly true as we get older. So if we can find a way to move better and
Mhm,
so while we're busy, yes, building all that muscle mass as menopausal women, we also need to make sure that the fundamental movement patterns are good. Otherwise, it's like putting a whole lot of extra floors on a building that really can't support the weight.
mhm. Ooh, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, great answer. Okay, so here is another one. Susanna has a rare gift. She has the skills to be able to align the science of anatomy with the art of movement way, way beyond basic exercise.
I kind of like that one. Um, I started in movement as an artist. That was my thing. I movement means a lot to me. It's the lens through which I process pretty much everything in my world. Um, and so my movement was inspired by pictures and images and ways of considering movement that weren't necessarily anatomical. But I'm a bit of a geek and I really like to know why things work the way they work. And so I really dove into the science to learn what was happening, how it happened, um, the physiology, the anatomy, all of the pieces behind that. Now, I'm certainly not a physiotherapist or a scientist by any stretch of the imagination, but I've worked really hard to understand things from a scientific perspective. Um, in part so that I can talk to physiotherapists and physicians and therapists of various kinds, and we have a common language.
Mhm,
But we don't think in our bodies. Unless maybe you're a doctor or a scientist, most people don't think about their bodies in terms of their anatomical parts. we think about how they feel and how they move. And so if I can use some of the information that I have from the science world and some of the information that I have from the arts world and create a place where those meet, and everybody's different, right? Everybody has a different way of thinking about and being in their bodies. So if I can find a way to communicate what I'm asking for in a way that really makes sense and feels true in a body, then that person can run with it. And it's not my information, it's
Mhm.
something that they can embody and feel for themselves. And then it goes beyond the Pilates studio and they can take
Mhm.
it out into a run or into looking after the kids or
Mhm.
climbing a mountain, whatever it is they want to do.
Yeah, and that's something else that was mentioned throughout the whole thread of testimonials is that, when your clients have reevaluated what movement means for them, every way they move changes.
Mhm.
So it's not just doing the exercises, but, picking up your groceries, picking up the laundry, taking a walk, washing dishes, like all of these things change because you now have a different perspective of how your body operates.
Yeah. And I think there's something to that, uh, connecting to your own body
Yeah.
as opposed to being in a room where everybody's doing the same thing at the same time and someone's cheerleading and I'm, yay, that's great, keep doing it. But I find it really valuable when you can sink into what does this feel like for me? And then you notice when things
Mhm.
are hanky, when you're doing something else, like, oh, there's that hip thing again. And you have information to play with that you can change your own world. And I think that for me, that's a huge way for people to start to inhabit their own bodies, their own movement, and I do believe, without trying to sound wandering crystal pyramid, that it changes the way you are in the world.
Yeah. Yeah, because you move through in a different way.
Mhm. You
And now
interact with people and things and
yeah,
circumstances quite differently.
because you're in a level of comfort within your own body.
Yeah.
So let's bring this back to aging. I
Okay.
think I think we've got a theme going on here now. So as you, become more in tune with your own body and how it moves in every small way and every big way, as you're aging, does that make you have a different level of awareness of when something isn't working as it should?
Oh, yes, I think so. Absolutely. We can be quite oblivious a lot of the time, right? We sort of do the things that we need to do, or in our lives, there's lots going on, and we tend to um, focus on the things that are right in front of us. And a lot of us, and I name myself in that package sometimes too, tend to push through regardless. When you start to understand the impact of that mindless pushing through, because that can be a really bullying way of behaving to yourself. When you
Mhm,
start to understand the impact of that over time, you start to recognize that maybe it's better to pay attention a little bit sooner,
yeah,
and you start to see where I'll go back to those movement patterns, where those patterns um, aren't feeling quite right. When you start to feel how they are when they feel good, and there's a smoothness and a fluidity and a sense of strength and confidence in your movement, and then you notice that all of a sudden climbing up the stairs is a little less fluid, or there's something happening in your knee when you do that. You start to pay attention to what you could do differently.
mhm,
And then you start to know when you need help, right? Sometimes it's something you can sort out by yourself. Sometimes you need someone else to give you a hand with that. And whether that's you notice a heart flutter when you're doing something, okay, maybe you better actually go see your physician. Maybe it's a doctor, or maybe it's just going and doing a really mindful workout and paying attention to what's happening.
yeah, not having somebody else pay attention.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah,
I've had Early on in my career, I had people come and say, I've got this thing in my back. Will you fix me? And to that, my response has always been, no, I'm not going to fix you. That's not my job. I'm here to guide
Yeah.
you. I can help you. We can play with some things together, but this is your body. This is your job. And you're the only one who can really make a difference in what's going on here. And I think that's true even if you've opted, even if surgical procedures are a part of the pathway for you. You do the surgical
Mhm.
procedure, that's not the end of the story. You've got to
No,
sort of
no.
repattern what happens after that so that you thrive
Yeah,
coming out of that surgical procedure.
yeah.
Taking a pill or having a surgery is not the end of the road. And
Mhm.
I mean, it takes effort. There is that, right? Sometimes people don't want to make the effort, and that's a choice you can make. But I want to live in a really vital way till I'm old and crotchety. And um, movement is a way that I think I can empower myself to do that. So,
Mhm. Yeah, and, another theme that was recurring throughout the testimonials was, people that have come to you with lower back pain, and one of them is, "I came to see Sue with a lower back pain issue. I would wake up in the mornings, and I would take a couple of hours for me to get moving. Sue taught me how to let go of old patterning and create new ones."
mm, a lot of people have back pain, and it can be really debilitating. It can be really debilitating. And there are a lot of experiences that people have where they go in to see their physicians and, you know, mm,
They don't have answers.
they don't have answers. And you go through various procedures. And I'm not saying don't travel those pathways if they feel right for you, but you may not always get the answers that you want.
No, and actually before they go down the pathway of procedures, they go down the pathway of pills,
Yeah.
which often will create a whole new set of issues.
Yeah. Well, and it may make it so that you can get through your day, right? It may make it, the pill may help you find your way to do the things you have to do in the day, but it's not really a long term solution.
No, it's not
Um,
resolving the issue.
and pain is a really tricky thing, right? Everybody is a little bit different with how they experience it. So, I mean, part of the process of repatterning something like back pain, um, I'm not going to claim to be able to eliminate pain, but
Mhm,
it's renegotiating your relationship with it and how to move through it and how to figure
mhm,
out how to balance your day, when you're experiencing pain, and what are the things that help you feel better, and what are the tools that you have to give you a new way of uh, sitting at your desk or
yeah,
standing or walking, or simple things that help your daily living. And it may start as a tiny, tiny little improvement, you
mm,
know, but gradually it's like a snowball effect. And as you start to feel you have a little power over small things, it begins to shift. And I think a lot of people find it gets a lot better. And
mhm,
for some, it's something they're going to have to manage their whole lives. It's
mm,
not going to magically disappear. But you start to realize that no, you don't have to give up mountain biking at 65 because you've had a back injury. No,
mhm.
you could keep doing that. You just have to figure out how to
How?
get there,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Okay, so now that leads me to Pilates. I'm a lover of Pilates. I mean, I signed right up when I was going to this gym. It had to be 30 years ago, and, the big selling point was you'll feel an inch taller, and I was like, "Yes, I'm there."
I'm with you. When I first started doing Pilates, I was still dancing at that point, but I would get into my car after my workout and I had to adjust my rear view mirror
Mhm,
to be a little bit taller after my class.
mhm. Oh, I love that.
And there are actually women who go in for their bone measurements,
Mhm,
after a certain age, they measure how tall you
mhm.
are and whether you're getting shorter. And there are people who actually go in to their physicians and they're actually taller. And it's not, obviously they haven't grown, but
No,
it's
it's
how they're supporting themselves and how they're supporting their spine. So instead of sort of hunkering down, they're
yeah,
able to support their bodies in
yeah,
length.
because it's all the compression of your spine, right?
Yeah.
That's why you're getting shorter.
Yeah.
and not just the spine, but all of the cushiony areas between the bones.
Yeah, well, you lose your sproing a little bit unless you're actively going after it, right?
Yeah.
That sort of bounce in your step gets a little more brittle.
Yeah.
So if there are things we can do to keep a little bounce, then
Mhm.
I'm all for it.
Yeah, I love that. So talk a little bit about Pilates and what makes it so much different than every other form of exercise. I don't even
Ooh.
consider it to be exercise.
Well, it's whole body
Yeah.
exercise. You're never just working a single part. Although I think there are a lot of
Mhm.
popular, as it gets more popular, you hear people talking about the killer ab workout and
Yeah,
the, you know,
but it's all
okay,
from the inside out, you know?
it's all from the inside
Right.
out. Designed as a whole system. So a lot of the time you hear people talking about being either mat work or reformer work or something. Um, Joseph Pilates was kind of ahead of his time, and he put a whole bunch of pieces together. He understood that the spine needed to be supported. He
Mhm,
understood that there needed to be some alignment in the body. Everybody's a little bit different, and it's not always going to look like it does in a textbook, but
mhm,
to find ways to support that. So yes, there is some core work, but that's even evolved over the years. The core is not just your abdominal muscles, and
mm,
core is sort of an integrating, uh, I would say, structure. It's a bunch of different pieces.
mm,
Um, but you're also working to balance the muscles around your joints to create uniform strength, so
mhm,
that it's not all thighs and buttocks and back. It's not, you're creating balance between the hamstrings and the front of the thighs and the quadriceps. You're creating balance between the abdominal muscles and the back muscles. Um, you want deep support. So a lot of the time when we go to a fitness studio, we're looking at the muscles everybody can see, right? Your biceps and your
mm.
deltoids and your butt muscles. And
These are those little forgotten connector muscles.
it's the little guys, right? They're little muscles.
Mm,
You might not even, at first when people are trying to access them, they're not going to feel the contraction of one of those muscles like you would a bicep or a thigh
mm,
muscle, a quad muscle. Sometimes you're thinking about it, but what happens is when you start to find those deep support muscles, all of a sudden the effort in your movement decreases. You don't have to strategize how you're going to do something.
mm,
All of a sudden the movement, if you're lifting a leg, it just pops up. If you're twisting, there's more range than you expected. And so if you can build your strength in that way, it's it's amazing how you can build uh, really agile, mobile strength in a body, and you're also building stamina, because that's the other thing people don't recognize is that a lot of those deep system muscles are stamina muscles. They're muscles, your postural muscles have to be able to support you for long periods of time and at a low level. You're not turning those muscles on at a maximum.
mhm.
It's a low level support that just kind of hums along in the background.
But that's
Eh,
sustainable.
well, exactly, it's sustainable, and then it's just like you're dialing up the a dial on a dimmer switch. When you start to add load of different kinds, your support needs to be able to sort of tune up a little bit to match whatever load it is you're putting on the body. And if we don't have the ability to do that, then we can push through that load, but it starts to get crushing and it compresses us and it makes us feel tight, and it, squeezes the joints together in a way that is sometimes not comfortable.
Mhm.
So if we can kind of open that up and give it a little bit of space, and as I said earlier, a little bit of sproing, then it feels a whole lot better.
Now how does that impact the nervous system?
Hugely, hugely. The nervous system, I mean, more and more and more, the nervous system, we're learning the power that it has. If we think about, if I'm just talking about the muscles in your body, for example, a lot of the time, if you are doing things at max load and, hard and fast and going for it, you're typically kind of tapping into the type 2 muscles, which tend to rely, they're your sort of fast twitch muscles. And those will link a little more to your sympathetic nervous system, which is your fight, flight, freeze stuff. The deep support muscles tend to relate. They're a little more the slow twitch, the other side of things, and they tend to relate a little more to the parasympathetic nervous system, that slow, longer contraction, the stamina stuff that is related to the rest and digest part of your body. What we're recognizing is that if we're always in power mode, if we're always in that push, 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 push constantly, and that is the only way we figure we can go, the nervous system sort of goes, okay, this is where we live. And it has effects on your hormones. It has effect on how you recruit your muscles. It can actually make it harder to access some of that deep support because you're just in this braced, overly driven state in your nervous system, and that affects every other system in your body.
Mhm. Yeah, but when I was in the best shape of my life, it was when I was riding my bike a lot
Mhm.
and doing reformer Pilates 3 times a week.
Great.
I would ride my bike like 20 miles back and forth to the Pilates studio.
I love it. That's a good workout. I like that.
Yeah, and that was when I was in the best shape of my life.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of people get confused when they come into a Pilates studio initially, and
Mhm,
there's a lot of education. You're learning new skills.
mhm,
And so I know that that's something that people run into a little bit when they're feeling that, come on, and that was my experience. When I started Pilates, I was dancing professionally. I was in fabulous shape,
mhm,
but my knees were a mess. And when I went into the Pilates studio, they recognized all the imbalances that I had going on in my body. And so they didn't let me work at heavy loads. They didn't let me do the things that I felt like would give me a great workout. And
mhm.
it took me a little while to figure out, we're repatterning something. This is different.
Yeah,
And that was a learning as much for my brain as it
mhm,
was for my body.
yeah,
But it made me a better dancer. It made me a better athlete. It made me better at walking around in the world.
yeah,
Um,
and, like, you feel when you hit the next level.
mhm, you do. It's different.
Yeah, you really feel it.
Yeah. But you have to be willing to sometimes do things differently.
Yeah. Yeah,
And that's, yeah,
you gotta start from I mean, like, I've been doing Pilates on and off for 30 years, and now I haven't done it in a couple of years because of my AFib. I had to stop because laying down and
yeah,
exercising didn't work. So, when I go back and start up again, and I will, I'm gonna start right from scratch like I never did it before.
yeah, yeah. Because there will be things that have changed since the
Yeah.
last time you did it.
Everything's changed.
Yeah, yeah.
Everything has changed.
But that's a really good way I mean, it is a humbling process, right? When we have to go back to the beginning. I had a similar thing. I had a back injury I didn't understand in my body and had to go right back to the beginning again. And it's a humbling process.
Yeah.
But if you can sort of dive into that and sort of start with a beginner mind, and yes, the wisdom that you have from previous experience is still out here, but
Mhm.
allow yourself to go back to that place where maybe you don't know.
Yeah.
And that can be a really, really powerful place
Yeah,
to,
because, then you allow the muscle memory to come back organically
yeah, yeah,
as you grow, and it's safe. It's a safe way to advance the practice.
yeah, you're not forcing anything,
Mhm.
but it might take a little longer than you like.
I think that's one of the other things that comes with age. Just a wee bit of wisdom. And the I don't wanna hurt anymore.
Oh, it's so true. Yeah, I don't want to hurt. That's a powerful motivator. I don't want to hurt anymore. I know that one.
So we have reached the end of our time here. I could talk to you all day long, but I like to round up these calls, these interviews with a wisdom bomb, something small and actionable that people can take with them as they move more gracefully throughout their day.
Well, I think it's a small wisdom bomb, but I think it's a powerful one. I think what I would suggest is you start paying attention, not to what you think should be going on, but to what actually is going on. And trust that you have everything you need inside of you. You might need a little help along the way, but trust that you know. Don't let anybody tell you that your experiences and your sensations and your wisdom is not valuable. You are the boss in your body, and own it.
It sounds like, I'm just writing this down, I'm sorry. It sounds like it would make you a better self-advocate in other areas of your life.
I think it does. I think it does. I mean, we're not just heads with, bodies
Limbs.
carrying heads around, whatever that saying is. We are really integrated beings. And I sort of think of ourselves as holograms. And so the emotional, the mental, the physical, all of those pieces, they're not separate. We can't compartmentalize them the way we think we can. And if we can start to feel that advocacy for ourselves in one area of our lives, I think it begins to move into other places as well.
That's an excellent way to end this conversation. Thank you, Susannah. And here's her website, movingspirit.ca. And she's also available on the Real 50 Over 50 website. And you can rewatch this interview and share it with others who need to listen and watch as well. And keep coming back on Wednesdays at noon Eastern, because we are booked all the way into the fall with interviews, and I've got amazing women to bring your way, and a couple of other things I'm working on up my sleeve. So thank you, Susannah, and everybody have a great Wednesday. If you are watching this on the replay, just keep the conversation going. Tag us with questions and comments, and we'll come back and we'll respond. So have a great day, everybody, and thank you for spending some time.
Thanks, Donna.